Hello, welcome. We are going to use the last 10 minutes of this to do some Q&A, so start thinking about your questions now. I'm sure you don't want to hear my voice too much, and I want to hear from you. So I'm Nicole Goodkind. I am a writer at Fortune magazine, and I'm here with Roham Gharegozlou. He's the CEO of Dapper Labs, the man behind NBA Top Shot, Flow Blockchain, CryptoKitties, and just an all-around NFT king. I think, can we say that? That's pretty accurate, right?
I like OG better.
Yeah, the OG of NFTs. So I want to start with the obvious. How do you get someone like me? I'm a self-declared Luddite. You know, I don't even have a physical wallet, let alone a crypto wallet. How do you explain this to me, right? How do you convince me that this is something that I need?
Well, I think it starts with the things you're passionate about. I don't think you should have to learn what a wallet is or what an NFT is. You should join a community that you feel passionate about, and then NFTs give you a way to engage with that community that you never had before, a way to be a fan, a way to be a contributor, a creator that you never had before. And if you have sort of that creator gene, whether it's art or music or writing or whatever, I mean, in the case of journalism, then you can kind of connect with your fans in a way that creates value for you today, but also aligns incentives in the long term. Because NFTs are the first time that you can have a digital object that can trade from person to person, and the creator gets a royalty every single time. And so when I talk to athletes, that's the thing they get most passionate about, because Top Shot is a way for them to kind of create a legacy that goes forever and passes on to their children. Every time a moment is traded, a royalty is given back to the person who's sort of highlighted in that moment. Every time a work of art is traded, royalty goes back to the artist. And that's just incredible alignment between fan and creator.
So why is it important then to convince me and athletes and, you know, our parents and our grandparents and whoever to invest in this and to learn how to use this technology?
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily think it's important to convince you. I think it's what we tried to do is just get a bunch of users to come in and see, wow, as an NBA fan, I can have a lot more fun with Top Shot. Top Shot takes my fandom to the next level. And then we turn around to developers and creators and we say, hey, look, there's a community here that you can build new kinds of products and services for. And the reason it's important in the long term, you know, the thing that I go to sleep thinking about, I wake up thinking about, sort of the mantra of our company is how do we put a blockchain wallet, a crypto wallet in every pocket? And the reason that is important, I mean, I think it's more important than a PC on every desktop. You know, I remember, I'm 35, so I'm old enough to remember, you know, when Bill Gates was all about a PC on every desktop. And I think a crypto wallet in every pocket is so much more powerful because it lets us have a way to engage with each other peer-to-peer and sort of own our own identities, own our own destinies in a way that it's a sort of a digital passport, but it's a jurisdiction that you can choose to be a part of. And I think that's just incredibly powerful. But that is too high level. I think it's all about how do you get started? How do you as a consumer do something you couldn't do before? Have transparency you couldn't have before? You know, make money in a way you couldn't make money before. That's what sort of most people will care about, rather than the sort of underpinnings of the technology. But once they join, they're like, whoa, I'm part of a movement. I'm part of a thing that's going to, a sort of arc of history that's going to make life better for our children. And that transition is really inspiring to see.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned a desktop or a PC on every desktop, because I think when people think about NBA Top Shot or CryptoKitties, they see these trading cards, these games, but games have historically been a huge entry point to people who might not necessarily be on the cutting edge of technology, right? It's what gets them in. So do you see this as a way to get more people in and then to expand their worlds?
Yeah, I mean, that's I think our mission at Dapper Labs is to use the power of play to make this technology accessible for people. And then the thing I get excited about as an individual, as an angel investor, and as a sort of member of this community is the other creators that having a base of people attracts. You know, when you have, you know, this time last year, we would have had a couple thousand people at this conference, but that would have been everybody in NFTs, period. Creators, consumers, collectors. Now it's a community of millions of people, and I think this time next year it's going to be a community of hundreds of millions of people, and that creates opportunity for artists, for developers, and that's what I get amped about.
Yeah, hundreds of millions of people. That's a lot of people. So
Well,
what?
Facebook has 2.89 billion monthly active users. That's that's the addressable market here, 2.89 billion.
What does that look like? What does mainstream adoption of this look like? I mean, what does the world look like in 5 years if everyone is involved in this?
Well, I think I like how Chris Dixon says NFTs and crypto in general are fixing the internet, and I think the internet took sort of decades to mature, but that's because we had to dig up trenches and put fiber optic cable in the ground. All of that's now done. And so in the next 5 years, once we solve scalability, user experience, the cost considerations of these products, I think it's going to create a sort of a wave of opportunity much greater than the App Store did for independent creators. But this time there's no gatekeeper, there's no person to take the 30% fee of every transaction you make, and basically every individual and the lines will get blurred, right, between creator and consumer. And every individual can sort of have a share in the things that they're passionate about, and have alignment with the communities that they're a member of. I mean, it sounds freaking obvious, but that's not how things work today, right? Like in the digital world, which most of us live in, most of us don't live in a physical community, we live in a digital community, and most of us have zero say, zero transparency, zero visibility, zero control, zero ownership in any of the communities we're a part of. Well, most of us now do, right? Which is why we're fucking obsessed about NFTs. But for most of our lives, we haven't had the option to.
I want to get into that later, but first I wanted to talk about something that you briefly touched on, which is these barriers to entry. What are the largest barriers you're seeing right now, and how are you trying to overcome them? Maybe one or two.
Well, I mean, everybody focused on scalability, sort of, transactions per second, all this stuff. But I think it's about two things. One is you got to start with who the user is and why they care, which is sort of to your point around, hey, why should I care? Well, I don't think you should care about the technology. Well, you as a sort of influencer and a kind of a historian of sort of technology potentially should, but sort of most individuals, it's like, well, what are you excited about? And today, I'll give a shout out to FaZe. We just announced a partnership with the International Cricket Council, and that's 2.5 billion people that care about cricket. And so that's how they're going to discover it. Mm-hmm. They're going to say, well, look, to kind of get closer to my favorite players, to be able to get access to perks and experiences that I can't pay for at games, and to really kind of experience the thing that I love in a way that I couldn't experience before, I'm gonna have to buy this NFT thing. Wait a second, now I can sell it. Wait a second, now this gives me access to this Discord community. Wait a second, all these people are like me, and they want to spend time talking about these things too. And it sort of just kind of is a rabbit hole that leads to, well, why doesn't the rest of my life work this way? Why isn't everything so transparent, low friction, under my control? And I think that's how mainstream adoption happens. It's sort of a breadcrumb that leads people deeper and deeper into a rabbit hole.
That's interesting. Why doesn't the rest of my life work this way? So do you see this then spreading into everyday life in new and interesting ways?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, so when we started working on the NFT standard in sort of early 2017, it was in response to thinking through. We had been approached by a big group of kind of real estate experts and former CEOs of sort of large real estate companies, and they were kind of looking at blockchain, saying, well, how do we represent plots of land on the blockchain? Mm. And we said, well, you can absolutely do that because you can create a digital asset, sort of that is a sort of a receipt or a kind of deed of ownership that just trades and is linked to the land. But it would be very inefficient to do it as a crypto coin. You can't have a different coin for every plot of land. Yeah. So we created the NFT standard. We designed the standard as a sort of with the realization that most things in life are non-fungible, starting with the land we live on, and then it kind of extended to cats. So it's sort of because we realized, wait a second, in order to actually build adoption, right? To have mainstream adoption, you need to get catalysts. And a catalyst can't be, hey, you're going to save 15% on your car insurance. You're not going to sort of, sign up for, go through all of that pain to save 15%.
Right.
You're going through all of that pain to have fun, to do something you could never do before, to sort of, to get 10,000%, right? In the case of other, sort of in the case of, DeFi, et cetera, et cetera. You need deeper catalysts, and that's why we started with Dapper Labs.
So you said earlier that this kind of spreads amongst like-minded communities, but I have a question about inclusion and diversity. Are you trying to reach out to maybe overlooked communities or people who aren't typically, in this world, and how do you reach them?
Yeah, I mean, looking, I don't want to call it sort of anybody out, but looking at the crowd, like, we've got work to do, right, in terms of diversity. And there's but that's all of technology, that's all of gaming. It's sort of not a problem that's just isolated to crypto. But the problem with crypto is you need money to get started, right? You need money to you need money to do anything. You need money to you need money to send money. You know what I mean? Like, there's nothing, none of these systems work without money. And so the first thing we're doing is we're saying, well, that shouldn't be a barrier to adoption. And we work with, whether it's Berkeley University, Yonsei University, independent nonprofits that are work with underserved communities. Say, well, if you're someone that wants to get started building something, if you're an artist that wants to deploy a new smart contract, if you need flow to pay for transaction fees, to pay for storage deposits, all of this stuff, that shouldn't be a barrier. Or kind of mapping it to Amazon Web Services. They give $100,000 free to startups. You say, well, let's give $100,000 of flow credits to people to creators, and to let them not have to think about the cost of getting started on the crypto network, and also for their users not have to think about it, right? And you guys might have seen the Teslas going around town, hashtag no gas fees. That's a really important part of our philosophy on mainstream adoption. The protocol makes it easy for the app to pay for the user. The protocol makes it easy for the user to start with a custodial wallet, and then eventually take self-custody over their own assets. And as a developer, you just sort of enable that.
And this is just a reminder to start thinking about questions, because we are going to get to you very shortly. You're focused on sports, or I think that's what the public opinion is, right? You have NBA Top Shots, huge fan. You're working with NFL, cricket, soccer, right? How are you expanding into other fields? Because I know that you are, and what can we expect from you next?
Well, Dapper Labs is gonna, for us, we really want to stay focused, because we think, there's billions of sports fans. B, we're just scratching the surface of even our vision for Top Shot when we started. So we've taken the Top Shot team, built out a sort of full executive team, and we're calling it Dapper Sports. And it's gone out and signed long-term deals with NFL, UFC, La Liga, a few other sports leagues we haven't announced. And the goal there is to just sort of serve as a lighthouse for what can be possible with an NFT project. It shouldn't even sort of, that label kind of should go away. What is possible with a open community that sort of shares value and is a two-way street between the creator, in this case the athlete, the brand owner, the NBA, and sort of the consumers. So I think for Dapper Labs, we're staying really focused on sports. We do have small teams kind of working on what are the next sort of frontiers, whether it's decentralized autonomous organizations, whether it's sort of metaverse, digital land, et cetera. But we think that today, this is how we go from, Top Shot today, about 1 million sort of registered users, about 600,000 paid users. That's how we go from 1 to 10 to 100 to 1 billion very, very, very quickly. And then the open community building on flow is what's tackling everything else. Yeah. And a lot of those folks are also sort of sports focused, because that's the sports is such a natural fit for collecting, for kind of community, right? It's the thing that brings so much of humanity together. And so you have FaZe with cricket, you have Animoca that's building play-to-earn games for the next 2 Olympics. And then you have folks like Genies, which have 98% penetration of celebrity avatars across every field, music, movies, whatever you want. And we have 5,000 other developers that are building, whether it's artist platforms like Misa, Ethereum platforms like Rarible coming to Flow, or whether it's entirely new kinds of products that, maybe people haven't tried building before because the cost, the user experience, the users weren't there. So what we say to people is this is a place where you can build for mainstream users. And we rank our projects by number of users, not dollars transacted. And that's an important sort of mindset shift as well. Because that's the whole thing. It's all about adoption. How do we get 1 billion wallets? Then how do we get to 2 billion wallets? And that way, developers can build sort of the next layer of utility on top.
And I know you want developers to work with Flow on their own, but there are some collaborations, right? So what is your dream collaboration? Like, what would you love to see happen in the next few years?
I mean, so many things that I expected to take a few years have been happening this year. So look, I think what is really important for us to recognize is NFTs don't live in an isolation of everything else. And so people have phones in their pockets, people have friend groups, people already have an install base. And so a lot of what we're trying to do is say, well, how do we get the more visibility on the things that creators are building today? Most people in this watching are probably creators, not just consumers. And how do we kind of sort of tap into where consumers are today? And I don't think it'll take 5 years. I think in the next sort of 3 to 6 months, you'll see every single social platform, every single gaming company, every single place where consumers spend time is going to start becoming blockchain aware. And that to me is powerful. Whether it's, hey, my assets, I'm going to bring my stuff into this experience. Eventually it'll be my identity. I want to bring who I am into this experience. And you can mold your software to serve me. And that means me as a consumer, I have choice, right? I can leave one product without leaving the value that I helped create for that product. And that's what I get excited about.
As everyone gets involved in this experience, and as a journalist, I get so many pitches. Bad Bunny is on, has an NFT. Everyone has an NFT now. How do you avoid this kind of eye-rolly burnout where people start to, say, okay, who else is going to do this? Who else is going to jump on this? And how do you legitimize it?
Well, I mean, I think I think the good projects and bad projects actually get separated out really quickly. Like, we don't give, people will ape into something, once or twice, but then they kind of learn their lesson, and the market's become a lot more sophisticated, even over the last 10 months or so. And I think that as we get more tools, more journalists asking the right questions, more transparency, more sort of community sort of vetting of different projects, I think all of that gets better. So it's just a process. Like the early internet, the early social networks, everything had a certain level of chaos. And I just say, let's embrace it. Let's sort of learn from it. But as a community, let's hold each other, accountable. And when there are problems, let's shine a light on them. But then let's fix it and move forward.
So that kind of goes into my next question, which is about Flow. You say that Flow is kind of this key element to this mainstream adoption. I'm wondering how. I mean, what do you see there? What is particularly unique about Flow?
Well, we built Flow. So we built Flow as application developers. We felt like the protocol needed to do more work to make it easy for app developers to build good user experiences. That's sort of the problem statement, I guess. We struggled because everybody wanted to keep protocols as simple as possible, which meant the applications on top have to do heavy lifting, which actually made the application more complex, more error prone, and less composable. And the most special thing about blockchain is software is that it can be composable, it can build on each other. And so Flow, out of the box, every user account is a smart contract wallet. Every sort of paying gas fees, opening accounts on behalf of users, paying deposits on behalf of users, very trivial. The Flow version of Web3 allows an app to, with the same client wallet interface, support custodial and non-custodial wallets. And so the user can choose, hey, am I eventually bringing my PayPal wallet, paying with PayPal, storing my NFTs in PayPal, or am I coming with a ledger, paying with the crypto on my ledger, storing my NFTs in my ledger. And the app shouldn't have to care, because an app developer shouldn't have to make sort of philosophical decisions on decentralization versus centralization. That should be the user's choice. and the app shouldn't have to kind of build multiple standards that they have to maintain in parallel. So those are kind of some examples. The programming language for Flow, Cadence, was built from the ground up for smart contracts. We built obviously CryptoKitties, but we also built the first smart contract, first consumer smart contract wallet on Ethereum, and we also built the Cheese Wizards, which oddly is one of the most complex smart contracts I think ever built. It came within 52 bytes of the EVM bytecode limit. And we stretched this, and we looked at all that and we said, well, look, if you're trying to build copy-paste tokens, you can use sort of some off-the-shelf programming languages. If you need to build custom smart contracts that create new utility and new DAOs, et cetera, you need something that sort of is inherently secure. And so Cadence is the first resource-oriented programming language. I mean, eventually Facebook built Move as well. But choices like that basically make life easier for the developer, which makes the consumer products on top safer, easier, faster to use.
Okay. Feel free to correct my understanding of this, but Web 2.0, right? Web 2 began as almost a response to Web 1, which was the dominance of AOL, right? There was this dream when it began that it would also be free and open, and quickly it turned into what we're seeing now, and now there's Web 3, which is this response in turn. How do you stop the same exact thing from happening, which I think we are seeing with some recent news announcements might be happening? How do we keep it open?
Well, I mean, this might be an unpopular opinion, so maybe bear with me, but I think that cat's out of the bag, genie's out of the bottle. The toothpaste is out of the tube, but that's not a startup on Flow.
What can we come up with?
The same way as information wants to be free on the internet, I think software wants to be open on blockchains. There's too much value that's created when an NFT or when a piece of software, like a smart contract is just a permanent open API. There's too much value that's created from that openness because people the visibility, the composability, the ability to build on top, the compatibility with other applications, and so there's no sort of turning that back. I think that, and you see that even the most closed platforms, the digital middlemen who are trillion-dollar companies, only because of the value that their communities create on their platforms, even those folks are embracing decentralization, in a sense because they have to, in a sense because it's what users will demand, it's what developers will want, and at the end of the day, as a middleman platform, you have to be the place where these developers and users go to meet. So, I don't know. I think there's no the reason Web 2 closed up and happened the way it did is because the internet didn't have a native payment method. The internet didn't have a native governance layer. The internet didn't have a native way to handle identity in a way that's under users' control, right? Like client-server architecture simply doesn't allow the things that NFTs and cryptocurrencies, et cetera, allow. And blockchain is an evolution of client-server architecture. So that's how I look at it. Like it's not a, dramatic sort of, philosophical battle that we have to fight, or a choice between convenience and decentralization. I think consumers need convenience. There's no way billions of people will adopt something if it's not convenient. But I think that the technology now enables it. It's now possible, and you can never sort of put the toothpaste back in the tube.
I don't want to misattribute. I think this is a great quote from you, but it might be from one of your co-founders. But Google always says, "Don't be evil," but you're making it so you can't be evil, so to speak, right?
I think that's a general statement for the entire blockchain industry. Mm-hmm. I think that once the whole point of sort of open software is you're making commitments in a way you yourself can't reverse, and I think that's really powerful. I mean, what is Bitcoin other than an open app that lives on an open computer that does a set of things that everybody can trust and nobody can subvert, and actually anybody can access. I think that permissionless accessibility is really important too.
I know you're tired of hearing my voice, so I want to open this up to questions. If you, want to raise your hands and just shout out your questions. Oh, we'll get to you next. We're going to get to him first.
Let's say we get to the ideal world where everyone now has a mobile crypto wallet. Now what? And also, do you think that there should be one wallet such as Dapper Labs, or is it better to have a vast array of wallets?
Yeah, absolutely. The question was, is it better to have one wallet that rules them all, like a Dapper wallet, or a vast array of wallets? And also, what happens then? What if now you have a billion wallets in people's pockets, sort of so what? The first answer, I mean, I don't think it's, today, wallets are not a winner-take-all sort of layer in the stack, because in a sense, a wallet is kind of like a browser. It gives you visibility into things. You store your stuff in it, but a well-made wallet will let you take your stuff and use different wallet interfaces into that same stuff. So in a sense, I think there will be many different wallets, many different interfaces in general into anything, because the data is under your control, and you can sort of, it's almost like you have a vault, that's your wallet, but you can take it from bank to bank to bank, or you can store it yourself, you can build, walls around it, et cetera. So that's, I think, the answer there is there's going to be an incredible amount of choice. I don't want to say competition, but choice. And then the so what is, well, what happens when you have a billion phones in people's pockets? Well, developers build apps for them, right? And the key thing is not just phones in people's pockets, but phones with a payment method and a way for users to try new things without feeling unsafe, right? You have to have all of those sort of three things. You have, and obviously payment comes for free with blockchain, but that idea of a user feeling like they can try new things and be safe is different. So it's just opportunity, I think, for creators to connect with those consumers without a middleman and without anyone taking a percentage of the value they help create.
And I think there was, the gentleman on the upper right who shouted out before.
With your experience with CryptoKitties and Top Shots, what is your biggest lesson learned on the usability and scalability as it relates to centralization and decentralized spectrum? What did you learn most from those two important topics in that spectrum?
Did everyone hear the question? Yeah, good.
So with CryptoKitties, the main lesson we took away is we need to make the user experience a lot more accessible. And that, to us, started with we shouldn't force a new user to sign up for a separate wallet and download a browser extension and sort of figure out all of this mental overhead of what are seed phrases, et cetera, before just trying the product. We need them to try the product first. So that was a major lesson we took from CryptoKitties. And as a result, on NBA Top Shot, the way it worked is you sign up with a username and password, you put in your credit card, you didn't have the option of seed phrases. You didn't have the option of self-custody. In reality, because we built Top Shot at the same time as building Flow, and so we didn't even have the Flow sort of wallet interface completed by the time we pushed Top Shot into testing. And so that's that's sort of the reason we couldn't even have a non-custodial Top Shot even if we wanted to. But it was a main lesson we took from CryptoKitties that to have consumer adoption, you need to start the user with just get them to try the product. The main lesson we're taking from Top Shot is what I mentioned earlier, is that software on blockchains wants to be open. And it doesn't matter. Of course, top of funnel, you can't force the user to deal with overhead. But once they get it, then they're like, well, I want the real thing. I want to be able to, go from an automatic car to a manual car. I want to feel the rumble of the engine. Sorry, Elon. That to us is about sort of having a path where the user can kind of take custody over their own assets. Today, that's withdrawing their NFTs from Dapper Wallet and taking it into Blockto or Ledger or other Flow non-custodial wallets. Eventually, that'll be Dapper itself, just letting you sort of manage your own keys. Because on Flow, that's another key benefit. You can cycle keys within the same user account, which lets you keep the same public key, cycle private keys, and that's a much more efficient or much more secure security model. But B, let's developers build good user experiences that say, hey, start custodial, but go non-custodial at your own pace and with incentives and all that stuff.
Okay, I think we have time for one more, and there's a person in the very back who's been very patient with his hand up, so I'm going to go to you, the last row, but you're going to have to really shout. Just repeat the question.
Yeah, the question I think was Ethereum is more open, and what is my argument for Flow versus Polygon? I mean, for one thing, Polygon I don't think is equal to Ethereum in that sense. But look, I as a person, I'm like I said, I'm 35. I've seen a few of these sort of ups and downs. I don't think we're anywhere close to scratching the surface of the design space of what's possible with blockchains, what's possible with blockchain applications, the sort of trade-off space of what kinds of decisions you make in terms of what do you prioritize. And I think that Flow is taking a very, very different approach. We built Flow the way we did because we ultimately think that you need a massively decentralized blockchain, that anybody at home can plug in a home computer with a home internet connection and a home CPU and participate in either consensus or verification. And that's just simply not possible, well, either with and at the same time, we think sharding, layer 2, everything that breaks the state of the blockchain up makes things more complicated for the application developer. Because the application developer has to think to themselves, where is my user? Are they on this chain or that chain, or in this shard or that shard? How do I compose with other applications on other shards? And today, sort of 4 years after people started talking about this stuff, there still, to my knowledge, isn't a consumer application that people can use that sort of gives that seamless interoperability. And so Flow, in a sense, was built to, I mentioned some of the technical unique areas earlier. It's the only blockchain that uses cadence. It's the only blockchain that has a client wallet interface that allows custodial and non-custodial. It's got so many little decisions that because we dog-fooded our own platform, we built it for our own use cases. We built it in a way that's really optimized for mainstream consumer applications. It's not optimized for intense institutional DeFi trading. It's optimized for easy user experience.
Well, the toothpaste is out of the tube. We're going to see 100 million people here next year, right? Give it up for Roham Gharegozlou, the NFT OG. And thank you.